This is the Stay Healthy Experience, hosted by Robert Ferguson, which is myself, Barbara Kris, aka BK.
That's right.
Fat Loss.
That's right.
And Mr. Daniel Baldwin, who is missing in action, and he misses another good interview. Actually, you're my friend, Alicia.
Yes, definitely.
I consider you my friend, and I was sharing with Barbara that Alicia, who's coming in here, years ago wrote this amazing article and put me on the cover of the VC Star, Ventura County Star. And years go by, and then occasionally I get a call or an email, and where she'll interview me or like feature me as one of the resources for articles that she writes about. And then finally, a few years ago, I got to meet you for the first time in person.
Yes.
And again, you were helping us out because
Yes.
we were getting into the cannabis space and doing a show talking about the medicinal benefits of cannabis.
Right.
And she came, and next thing you know, we got the cover of a magazine.
That's awesome.
So whatever you touched turns to gold.
Yay.
Oh, that's awfully nice. Well, you're a fantastic subject, so certainly it was the subject matter that turned to gold.
See that, Barbara? So you
Wow.
can never say negative about me, ever.
I can't hate, huh? I can't hate.
No more hating. Stop it. Stop it.
Yeah.
Now, it's intriguing, okay, because if you look at my background and a lot of the work that I've done, like the second part of Fernando Vargas' career, I was largely responsible for that because he had a challenge with his weight and he had hurt his back, didn't fight for years. And then the VC reporter did an article on me. Fernando Vargas saw it and his management, and they were like, call that guy. So they call me because of the VC reporter. I go over and meet them, and they say, well, if you're as good as you say you are when it comes to helping people lose weight and all that stuff, why are you in Ventura? And I go,
Really?
oh, yeah, people, I mean, think about it.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
If
What does
you're
that
all
mean?
that,
Well, yeah.
he kept saying, you should be in Hollywood.
Okay.
If you got all this
enough.
going on. I'm like, yeah, I drive there a lot and come back. I like to be in Kentucky. So long story short, because of the VC reporter, I meet Fernando Vargas. I help him lose weight. He gets the second part of his career, and he goes on to make another $16 million.
Nice.
And all of that ties in again. It's whatever you're touching, Alicia.
Yeah.
You're making positive things happen. And then fast
awesome.
forward, you, the writer, doing all the things that you're doing, you have this book that touches on another part of your past. So that's enough of me rambling because you have this book
Yes.
called Fighting
Chance.
Fighting
Fighting
Chance.
Chance.
And it's a memoir about
Correct.
your journey.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
It's a nonfiction novel. Fighting Chance is about my boxing career back in the late 1990s. And the significance of this was when I was competing, I was one of about 400 women in America doing it at the time,
Wow.
in amateurs and pros. And my competitors were amazing. I've had 10 amateur fights, 5 wins, 5 losses, 3 wins by knockout, and I won 2 Golden Gloves championship
Whoa.
titles. And my pro debut at age 30 was named the California Female Fight of the Year.
You
That's
would never, you
awesome.
would see if some guy grabbed your bag, he would see you walking out and he would say, oh, that's an easy victim.
Right. She's like, I don't think so. Right.
Like 1, 2, 3. All right. So
Lay
how
him
do you,
out.
but how do you go from writer or journalist
Yeah.
to boxing? Like, how did that all happen?
I love that question. I was on assignment. I went on assignment. And the way that happened, I believe, was serendipitous because I was alone in the newsroom one night. The phone rings. Nobody's there to answer it. So I answer it. And it's a community activist in town telling me about a boxing gym for at-risk youth called Kid Gloves. And this was in Simi Valley, California. So El Nino rains destroyed this gym, again, back in the 1990s. And when she first pitched the story, as soon as she said boxing, I immediately turned off because back then I thought boxing was the dark side. I had no respect for it as a sport. I didn't understand it. And she kept pushing. She said, this is not the kind of gym for most kids. These kids are troubled. A lot of them come from broken homes. Some of them dealt with abuse. 1 or 2 were under house arrest. They dealt with some challenges, but there was something about boxing that built their self-esteem. It gave them a safe space to air their rage and insecurities, and it just made them better people. So as soon as she said at-risk youth, that's when I thought, okay, maybe I should delve into the story a little bit deeper. But still, I was jaded until I met the owner, Robert Ortiz, and saw
Nice
that-
guy. I know Robert.
Yes,
You
isn't
do?
he? He's a great guy. He's a great guy, and he's such a nice, kind-hearted man. My heart started to soften a bit. And after meeting him, I delved in deeper. the gym ended up reopening in another side of town, and that's when I went in and interviewed the coaches and the children and the families and got firsthand testimonials from these kids and their parents, you know, how boxing changed their lives for the better. So from that point, I was interested, but I had not yet delved into fighting. Robert Ortiz had always encouraged me to take an aerobic boxing class, and for a long time I said no, because I thought it was kind of silly at first. It didn't make any sense to me. Then I went through a pretty bad breakup where the boy I was with hit me more than once in the face.
Ooh.
So naturally I was pretty angry about that. And all I wanted to do was hit something really hard over and over again. I was just so angry that it happened, angry that that I allowed it to happen. Part of me felt like it was my fault. The normal things that women suffering from that go through. And after I took his class, I felt better. So I thought, maybe there is something to this. And then meanwhile, I'm taking
So was the first step more for fitness? Or
Yes.
just stress relief?
Yeah, the first step was I was bloody mad. And I really needed to get that out of me. And I thought maybe I could just hit something really hard.
Yeah, it was like a release for you.
Absolutely. Yes, because he put those gloves on me and I hit that bag for an hour and I did feel better. Partially because it's so exhausting and so physically draining, there's no room for anything else.
Right.
But it was a tremendous relief. So next thing I know, I'm taking 2-3 classes, sometimes a day. And that's how upset I was.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
And
Well, you know, Maureen Shea shares that same story.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like her big challenge and what got her into boxing was being in an abusive relationship. And then from that, she was releasing some stress. And next thing you know, you want to compete. What do you think about trying out? You know, you think I could do it? And then, you know, there's this confidence, right?
Right.
That came about that kind of gave her an additional platform to excel from the inside out.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that.
So you two need to reconnect again.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. I didn't know that about her.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how many women share that story.
Oh, I can totally relate to
and
that.
it comes out
I mean,
later.
yeah, I'm not a boxer, but I get it.
Oh, sure, sure. And my story's similar to Maureen's because after the boxing aerobics class became like I wanted more. So there's boxers and coaches in that gym. So I'd watch the boxers and these are professionals and amateur, the real deal. And I wanted more. So I just started watching them train and started doing what they were doing to train. I would, skip rope, shadow box, hit the speed bag, the double end bag.
Yeah.
Just kind of did that on my own on the sidelines, not thinking much of it, but other coaches started to notice. And then I'm approached one day by a guy named Stan Ward. He's known as Coach in the boxing world. And he approached me and asked if I would be ever interested in competing. And
What was that response like?
Yeah, I know.
Well, I should precede that by saying that Robert Ortiz and I had discussed it, and I had brought it up to him at one point, and I do remember this, and I know his heart was in the right place when he said this, but when I asked him about it, he told me I was too pretty to box, and I remember thinking, what does my reflection in the mirror have to do with me wanting to compete in this amazing sport and to be one of few women, 100 women doing it? So when Coach approached me, I told him I was interested, but that nobody would take me seriously because I was a girl. And he said that he would love to take me on, that women's boxing, that's when I found out how big women's boxing was back then, because there weren't that many women doing it. So soon enough, I was partnering with him and left Kid Gloves for a little while to train at Jet's Gym, owned by Benny the Jet in Van Nuys. And
So you've heard us talk about that gym.
I have.
We had a guest on recently from Australia, and they were going to work with Blinky Rodriguez. And so I go back to I met those guys in I think 87, 88. The Jet, Blinky.
Yeah.
Way back
Crazy.
there when John Claude wasn't popular yet. He used to work out there. Bill Superfoot Wallace was one of my mentors back then. Yeah, so I know exactly where you went and got the gloves dirty.
Yeah.
Well,
And how much time passed between when you went there, literally just taking a few classes? Well, you went there, you did an interview, but then you started taking classes. Well, how much time passed between taking the classes and then actually seriously saying, okay, I'm going to actually train as a sport? Yeah.
that took a few months, I'd say.
What?
I know. Like, well, I was thinking years or something.
Yes.
You were like, all in?
Well, I want to say about a year prior to me stepping. Yeah, there was a lag of time because I interviewed Robert at his the gym for at-risk youth first, and then covered the grand opening of the new location, and it just kind of evolved from there, and fell into place. And as you know, you've been to Benny the Jets. It's the real deal.
It doesn't get any more real than that.
What is it? Trial by fire is what they call it.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? Like, you know?
It's just that you have, anytime you, like, you know how you hear people say, if you want to be great, hang with people of greatness.
Yeah.
If you want to, exceed with your finances, maybe hang out with people who they've done that.
Right.
And when you walked into the Jet Center, at one point it was like the mecca of where some of the best boxers, kickboxers, martial artists around the world, like, did everything they could to go to.
Okay. Got it.
So when you're in a room and everyone's really good,
right,
you can only become great.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? It's
absolutely. There's definitely a different energy in there, and so I became known as Coach's Girl.
You were Coach's Girl
because I was the only girl. And
sweet.
When there were all these boys, and I do remember it being scary because prior to that, and I love Robert and I love Kid Gloves, and I did end up going back and training with Robert Ortiz as well. But when I first went to Jets, I was the only girl with all these boy fighters, and sparring over there with these boys was much different at Kid Gloves because at Kid Gloves, they would take it easy on me naturally. They didn't want to hurt me, and I really had no understanding of just how dangerous this sport was until I went to Jets. And Coach had me do something called a round robin, so I'm sparring with. He had 3 or 4 boys lined up in their corner, and I would do a round with them one after the other to understand their different styles. But those boys did not take it easy on me at all.
Wow,
man!
So all of this
hardcore.
Now all of this is tied into your book.
It is, and it's all outlined in the book. The journey. I remember every fight like it was yesterday. So there's a blow by blow of every fight, but it's also largely an emotional journey because before I got into boxing, I did not understand how it raises up all your insecurities. And I remember Coach telling me this. He said, this is going to bring up everything, even from the time when you were a little girl. And I didn't understand what that meant or how or that transcendence occurred. But there was something about it for me through the training, through surviving those battles and coming through on the other side. It did make me deep and look into what was really going on with me, inside of me, and the insecurities that I had kept hidden from a lot of people for most of my life. It brought it all up to the surface.
I bet.
And you kept a lot of this. Like, I mean, why am I just now learning recently that you know what I mean, that you box and that you had this journey? I love that you have a book and you're making it available to the people. So let's start with the title. Why did you title the book the title that you've given it?
I love that question. It has 2 meanings. So a fighting chance, the chance, the possibility of doing something remarkable, a fighting chance, just this battle, I believe, that occurs in everyday life. For me, boxing in the ring was a metaphor for life because life can be a battle sometimes. And to translate the two, the survivorship that I had in the ring helped me survive it in everyday life. It actually made everyday life seem a bit easier.
I mean, I totally get it. Obviously, we share that.
Yeah.
That combative side there, Barbara. But, when I was getting ready to do some work with, I think it was Anthem and David Murdoch, when they first opened up 4 Seasons, when it was called the California Wellbeing Institute, I was one of the first people they hired. And they asked me to create a program that people could go through that was all based on the metaphor and the lessons learned from being a boxer.
I love that.
And this was going to be just for executives.
Wow.
Because when you look at it, as you're stating, you have the fighter, who most people look at, that's the person out in front. But behind the fighter, there's a coach. So now you start to look at the support structure.
Right.
That is not just about the person walking out there and getting in the ring. It's about the family.
Yes.
What is life like when you're at home? And if any of that starts to break down, then you don't have the strength that you would have, and you're really not your best. So if you if you're in a position with A game, but yet you got an argument with your spouse or your lover,
Right.
I mean, that can just mess up
Messes
everything.
everything up,
Right.
or
It breaks
can.
up what the coaches, it breaks up the communication between you and the coach and you and your other trainers. And
Right.
anyway,
So, and then
I can't wait. I can't wait to read your book.
Well, and
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the support system, because I would never have made it as far as I did if it were not for my coaches and trainers who always wanted the best for me, were always looking out for my safety. They gave me the best training, the best skills. Coach Stan Ward was like a father to me. You become very close to your coaches. You spend a lot of time with them.
for sure.
And Robert and I also became close in that he worked my corner in several fights. Once he saw me excelling, he was all in helping me train. And his son, Scrappy Ortiz, Robert Scrappy Ortiz, would work with me as well, and so did Robert's brother, Danny Ortiz. And there were other men involved, but they were like father figures or big brothers to me. And what I loved about that, my relationship with them, is none of these men objectified me.
Right.
And I think that's
Yeah.
important.
Huge.
As a female, I wanted to be viewed as an athlete, not as a female. And because there's a difference, I did not want to be objectified. And these gentlemen never did that. They gave me the same kind of skills and the training they would any man.
Yeah.
Nice. Now,
So
all
I think.
right, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just wondering too. When you started, what kind of pushback did you get? Whether it was from friends, family, did people think you were crazy, or say that? Did you hear you're starting too late, or what kind of pushback did you get?
Thank you for asking that. Nobody ever called me out on my age, because I was 28 when I started, which is pretty late. And I'll tell you, all my competitors were younger than me. I fought teenagers. But what's lovely about boxing is that you've got fighters in their late 40s, some in their 50s. That's the kind of sport it is. If you're in shape, you're in shape. My mother did not like that I boxed at all, naturally.
Right.
She was worried I'd get hurt. My brother, I love my brother to death, but he didn't like it either. He didn't like knowing his little sister was getting in the ring. He used to say stuff to me like, it's legal murder, legal murder.
Yeah. Did they come watch you?
No, some people in my family, they just didn't want to.
Right.
But my father and my stepmother, they were different, because my father boxed in the Navy and he understood the psychology of a fighter and the inner gifts that you receive as a fighter, only another fighter can understand. So my dad was very supportive when he found out, and him and my stepmother actually came to one of my fights. They had a radio show at the time called the Frank and Patty Show, named after them. Isn't that cute? So they came to Midland, Texas, to cover my fight at the Everlast Championships. So yes, they've always been in my corner the whole way.
I mean, you went
That's
for
awesome.
it.
Yeah.
George Foreman,
Yes.
who everybody knows with the amazing smile and
Yes.
great personality, teddy bear personality,
Yeah.
wrote a book called God in My Corner.
Oh, that's
And it's one of
great.
my favorite books. And when I say my favorite book, it's not a book about boxing. He's a boxer,
Right.
and you get to learn his story, but you also get to learn about when he came out the Foreman Grill and all those things. And a big part of his life is boxing. And, big challenges of his life was losing and then reconnecting with his Lord and Savior, and then going back to boxing as a different person who became the oldest man to win the heavyweight title.
Yeah.
When I talk about his book, I don't talk about boxing at all. The reason why I love the book is because of the stories of overcoming, dealing with fears, dealing with, support breakdown as far as structure in the family, rediscovering the person that you really want to be and bringing it to life. What is this? I mean, we know we go on a journey with your boxing, but what is this book about for the people who were you before you even thought about
Right.
walking into the gym?
Sure. And that's a big part of the book that I struggled with. And going back to your question, why now? Because I retired in 2000. And for many years after that, I didn't talk about it. I still had to decipher and figure out what it was all about for me, because it wasn't just about competing or the training. It went so much deeper, and I had to figure that out for myself. So the parts of the book I struggled with were going back to my childhood. And I'll just say it was very challenging. A lot of people had challenging childhoods, but you talk about the family structure breaking down. That happened to me pretty early on. And as a child, you don't understand how to decipher those kinds of things when the parents are fighting all the time or when there's violence in the home. these are things I just grew up with, and they became normal. But it affects you in a certain way. It does something to your psyche, and if it's not discussed, and I didn't discuss it, don't remember ever going to family therapy or anything like that. I do credit a school psychologist who helped me tremendously starting from the second grade, and that's in the book. But thinking back about that family structure, and just basically what you said just now made me realize that probably the reason why I resonated to boxing so much was because I had this amazing support system who loved me unconditionally. I did not have that kind of support at home. And that's not to speak negatively about anybody in my family or what they went through. They're very vulnerable and they're human, but they had to deal with it on their own. And I didn't have that growing up. So I think that was a big piece of why I resonated to boxing so much, was because I had this amazing sports system that was always there for me with unconditional love.
Well, you think about how the universe works, right? Here it is. You have this writer. Someone comes to you and says, "Hey, go check out this boxing gym." That's not. I don't really do that.
Yeah, so 'cause you weren't a sports writer, right? Am I correct?
No, and that's interesting you asked that, because when she called and she first pitched it, the minute she said boxing, I said, "I'll pass it on to our sports writer." And she said, "No, you need to do this story. You don't understand what I'm telling you. This is what the story is.
Powerful.
It's about these at-risk youth." She said, the gym is destroyed. They have nowhere to go. They need this gym. They're going to fall apart if they don't have this place.
Right.
And I still didn't understand why until I delved
Isn't
in.
that interesting in hindsight when you look back, that was such a defining moment for you? I mean, we can think back on, I think, each of our lives at certain defining moments that like just put these events into play. It's amazing.
Well, absolutely. And that's in the book as well. These things that I don't believe were coincidences, that it was serendipitous. I just happened to be in the newsroom that night. I just happened to be working late. I was the only one to answer the phone. I think it's interesting.
Well, there are no coincidences, right? Now, for you, if my grandma is sitting here watching us talk about your book, we know that you box. You did some amazing things as a competitor, won a whole bunch of awards.
Yes.
And it's made you stronger. So now you write this book.
Yes.
And as you look at the book, it looks like, okay, that's a fighter. So many people may not pick it up because, again, their perception is, I'm not into boxing.
Sure.
So what can you share with us that someone who has no interest in boxing, if they read your book, what you hope they get out of it?
Sure. And boxing is not for everyone, but the book, it's more about the personal journey of boxing and how it affected me spiritually and emotionally and improved my psyche and my self-esteem. It's about my inner battle, not so much the battle in the ring. Certainly the fight scenes are fantastic, but it's woven into all these other things I'm going through and the thought process and how I was changing as I was fighting, because as I fought a few fights, things started to transform. I started to figure things out. My parents divorced when I was young, so my father and I disconnected for many years, but the boxing brought us back together. So that's a part of the story too, how boxing in a way it healed my relationship with my father, who I love very much. And it also talks about how at one point I started to feel bad about the girls I hurt in the ring. And if I didn't have that fight in me, and if I didn't want to hurt the other person through the sport, that was going to be a problem. But it all had to do with this stuff going on in the background, that I just started to get away from the need of wanting to hurt anybody anymore, including myself. So it's a spiritual journey. I want the book to inspire people to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable, and not everybody has a perfect picture life. Most people don't, I think, but it's just a matter of how we hit those things head on, how we hit those battles head on, that we look them in the eye. And I believe the only way out is through. And that's what the book is about.
So in your journey, like, where are you today? Like, where are you today as far as self-esteem, and like, who are you today in comparison to the person who you were before you started your journey with boxing?
Well, I'll tell you this, I'll never be a victim of domestic violence again.
All right. Amen.
Yes, it absolutely built my self-esteem. It also humbled me to a large extent. It helped me mature. That's another reason why the book didn't come out 20 years ago when I retired. I started the book, I wrote the manuscript. And another reason why it didn't was because I didn't want people to know those insecurities and those things I faced. I was embarrassed and ashamed by those things. I didn't want anyone to know. And then something changed, and I thought, and I interview a lot of people who've overcome incredible odds, and they're so open and honest, and they're the most inspirational people because of their honesty and their vulnerability. And I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So they inspired me to do that.
Now, do you
Nice.
intertwine your boxing experience with your journalistic experience? Like, is it all intertwined inside of your story?
In the book?
Yes.
Yes, it is. I do talk about that because I simultaneously trained as a boxer as I was working as a reporter. That went on for a while.
Yeah.
So that started to transcend as well. And it talks about how in the beginning of my journalism career, I used to be pretty cutthroat. And
what's
I
that
know.
mean?
I know. I want to.
Yeah,
What's that?
your aura changed when you said,
Yeah.
I was cutthroat.
I was very competitive as a journalist. I was young and I was very good at it. And I hate to say, but I wasn't as compassionate as I am now, and how that evolved. I just wanted the best story. I wanted the byline above the fold. I wanted to get the
Interesting.
last detail that the other competitors couldn't get, and I almost always did it. But sometimes people would read the stories and it wouldn't make them feel good, or I'd get some heat from it, and so that changed too. And then the boxing is intertwined with that because. And I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there's a specific assignment that I went on while I was still, training as a boxer. But I went on this assignment at work, and I just stepped outside of myself and saw what I was doing, and it appeared really ugly to me, and that started to transform as well.
Do you think that that experience in boxing? Do you think that when you look at your work prior to your journalistic work, prior to boxing, and then now, is it totally different?
Completely different. I'm known as the writer who specializes in good news now.
That's so interesting.
Yes, I only delve into stories that are inspirational, that inspire me, and that I know when I put them down on paper that they'll inspire others. And I got to give that up to a higher source. I call that source God, and I believe those stories are brought to me, from a higher source. And I also believe God helped guide me to write this book, because it was a struggle, but it just never went away. The desire to finish it never went away. It's been 2 decades, and I've been only working on it for 2 decades, and it's finally out. But there's just some kind of a nudging, like, don't keep this story inside of you. It needs to be told.
Well, this is so
love it.
great
It
because
is.
you share your journey, you take people into your family, you go to fighting, right? Which a lot of people are like, that's not where you go to become humble. But the reality is the best fighters in the world are the most humble, the biggest teddy bears you'll ever meet.
Right.
Yes.
It's like Bruce Lee used to say, you train to fight so you never have to fight. And that's why I think this story and the fact that you're going straight there, right? So there's so many people that are afraid to, like, their fear is to speak in front of a lot of people.
Right.
Well, I'm sure they have a fear of getting punched in the face.
Hell yeah. It's funny that you brought up the word humble, because when you were explaining that stood out to me. And because I think of even my own life and issues that I've had, and, difficulties that I've had to deal with, and how it makes you angry. And I can agree with you with the fact that when you come to a place where you can be, you can humble yourself to try to learn, and learn through that. But what do you feel as far as like your experience? Because you can see how people can just be angry and never really get to that place of humility to sort of deal with it. Like for you, what was that point or experience that made you, get, or helped you get there?
Oh, to transcend the anger?
Yeah.
That took a lot of self-reflection, taking a hard look at myself, and it wasn't easy. And I'm not going to say it's over, I'm not angry anymore, because that would be a lie. I still have issues that I deal with mentally, and when I do, I just try to quiet myself and pay attention to my feelings and ask where it's coming from, and it's usually something that triggered it, but it all comes from the past. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, because I without even meeting you and seeing the description of your book, and just seeing your journey as a woman, and how you found this outlet, and at first it was fitness. I absolutely resonate with that. I totally get you on that. It's
I can tell you, you're ready to start boxing.
Yeah.
You're ready to
I'll
hit
train
something.
you.
I am.
I do
I will
personal
totally
training.
train with you. And I tend to
fall in love
like,
with
even
it.
like I said, I'm not a boxer, but I tend to like the more aggressive type workouts. And I, just it's how I deal.
You will.
That's my outlet. That's
You'll
my
become
outlet.
addicted. And my oldest client is 72 years old, and I tell you, she's the bomb.
Yeah.
She hits the focus mitts like a boss, and her and her daughter come in, and they're amazing women. And I also coach the children's class, and they're wonderful. And they change, their ages 4 to 14. And
That's awesome.
They're wonderful children, and I tell you, they come in the minute they slip those gloves on, they become different people.
Beasts.
Now,
Right?
do you watch boxing as a spectator?
I love watching.
So you
boxing.
watch so who's your favorite male boxer of all time?
Oh, I'm going to get some blowback for this. Well, there's two. Obviously, Muhammad Ali, of course, who's most. But I love Mike Tyson. I think he was fantastic in his heyday. He was the knockout artist. I always thought he was quite brilliant. And I loved the way he trained. And I remember watching a documentary about him once, and somebody was asking him, how he trains for these fights, because some of his fights, you look away for 1 second to grab a chip and the fight would
It's
be
over.
over.
Yeah.
And he said that if he knew, he was just really bright. He said, if I know I'm fighting an 8-round fight, I'll train for 12. If I know I'm fighting a 12-round fight, I'll train for 15 or something like that. So I loved his level of discipline. I just thought he was such a force in the ring. He was so entertaining to watch.
Now, would you when you say that out loud, based on dealing with violence, right, and challenge with guys, and then Mike Tyson having a history of violence, right?
Right.
You're able just to see him for the talent that he brings to the ring,
To the sport.
but at the same time, you can see him for the person that he is today, right? It's kind of like with the Kobe Bryant situation,
Right.
right? Gayle King was on CBS. I don't know if you're aware of this, and she was having a conversation with Lisa Leslie.
Right.
And in that conversation, she brought up the 2003 rape situation with Kobe. And, Lisa Leslie kind of put it down, with total grace and compassion.
did.
But then Gail pushed and then pushed. And the African-American community, number one, lost their mind, right?
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg, everybody just lost their mind. Gail had to take days off. Oprah had to go and do a PR thing, and it's not dying down. So then you have certain group of people that are upset about it. Then you have a group of people who are trying to protect Gail. And it's all about looking back and just not being thoughtful or respectful for the moment. I guess we were talking yesterday, right? It was the
Yeah.
timing.
The timing, exactly.
It's part of the story,
Yeah.
but from the mindset of a fighter, you're able to look at a situation for what it is without anger and without prejudgment. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. Objectivity.
And in your book, do you feel that jumps out to people? Maybe in that journey, it takes them to a place where they're not walking around mad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you learn to fight so you don't have to fight.
Yeah.
You were angry. You were a certain type of writer. Now you have this sense of calmness and empathy.
Well,
I don't know. It's really
Yes.
It's
intriguing.
like peace with yourself, even.
Yes.
Right?
Very, very much so. And the boxing was a big part of that journey, but finishing this book and getting this book out and putting those words down on paper, that helped as well. That's a part of the journey as well.
Right.
And I'm seeing that all now. It was all laid out for me and meant to be. I believe I was meant to do all these things. And I think that's really interesting too, because I believe that something was protecting me and guiding me the whole way. When I look back and I'm writing these chapters and even about the past, I survived all those things. I was always protected. And I do believe that comes from God. So I've always had that spiritual background. But yeah, getting into the fight game, of course, a lot of these other guys, they have the same kind of background. And you were saying that, these are some of the calmest, fighters are some of the calmest people. And
Right.
it's surprising. Some of them are mean looking. You see them in the ring and they got neck tattoos and
Yeah.
but then, outside of the ring, they're very calm. And they're gentlemen too.
Yeah. And they do
That's-
transform. It's like, George Foreman to me is a great example.
Yeah.
Because if you go back and watch, when they were kings, or like the story of like
Yeah.
him and Ali,
Yeah.
you'll see that George Foreman was the meanest guy. He was mean.
Right.
He never smiled. When he went over to Africa to fight Muhammad Ali, he had a dog, And the way the kind of dog he had and the way he walked around with the dog, it was a disrespect to the local tribes. But he didn't care.
Oh.
So you have this guy who's that mean, and now the kids that see George now, that guy was mean.
I know, right? The guy in the infomercial.
It's like the whole world
guy?
should be boxing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like everyone could benefit by going through this journey.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and like with the children and the ladies I train, it's no contact boxing. It's just the training workout, but there's something that happens and I can't explain it. It's hard to articulate, and I try
I
my
want to train
best.
with you now. I'm like,
we have a blast.
We have to connect.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
Now, is this your first book?
Yes.
All right. Well,
Yes.
congratulations
I know,
on that.
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Now, if there was one chapter in your book that was the most difficult to write, what would that be?
It would have to be the chapter about my childhood. Talking about where it all began. Because everybody has an origin story about who and what made them who they are. So I go back to the beginning with my parents, who I love very, very much, who had their own trials and struggles and had their own demons and their own in their head to process, but didn't have the tools at the time to mitigate that.
Right.
And I love them and I honor them for that. And I'm grateful that I was given the opportunity to bear witness to their struggles, because it made me the person I am. And I know what they went through was heartbreaking.
With it,
Yeah.
and what are your parents like? What's your ethnicity?
I am Chinese American, so my
Okay.
mother's Chinese, my father's Hungarian, and he also has a bit of Cheyenne Indian, so I'm
Wow.
American Indian as well.
Oh, very cool.
And that's really a great mix.
Yeah. So I mean, I could feel the energy over there, like the warrior, like inside of you,
Yes.
is about to come out.
Yeah.
Now we have a with Stay Healthy.
Yes.
We have a campaign that we're launching. We've launched called Fighters for Health. And Fighters for Health, like the face of this campaign is Herb Dean, who is the referee, the most famous referee in MMA. So if you ever watched Ultimate Fighting, Herb's the guy, the black guy with the dreads.
That's cool.
He usually has like the main fights.
Yeah.
And then we're now talking to one of our dear friends who's a very popular boxing referee. Like, who would you say is the most popular boxing referee on TV right now?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't know. When you say boxing referee, the only person I can think of is Gwen Adair.
Who's that?
The first female boxing ref.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she refed one. I was, I had the privilege of having her ref one of my exhibition matches. And
Oh, how
she was
cool.
amazing. She's just amazing. So yeah, that's the only person I know is the female who's doing it.
Well, how come you didn't ask me? Just kidding.
Well, so
I'm teasing because I don't know.
as I'm working with this company, Stay Healthy, we're talking about health, and our goal is to get people healthier, right?
Sure.
And so I brought up to her, I said, we do like a round table. Anyone have any new ideas? And I go, I have an idea. Why don't we do something called Fighters for Health? Because fighters have the biggest hearts. They love to give back. And all you got to do is watch boxing in the month of October, and all the boxers, male, female, are wearing pink gloves. And so everyone was like, interesting. And so as we put it out there, it's being well received. Very soon we're going to go sit down. We want to sit down with Dana White at the UFC. And then we're going to start talking to, a lot of the leaders in the boxing world to raise funds for causes using their popularity as a platform to bring awareness to all the things that can make a difference, whether it's tapping out mental health, tapping out
stuff.
breast cancer, tapping out the challenges of life, tapping out, HIV, but bringing everyone together with various causes and concerns with the goal of educating the public and making a difference. And so you fit right in that. It's like everything you're talking about and you resonate is exactly what we're working on.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Well, that's a brilliant idea. I
It
love
is.
it. And I got to say, I'm honored to be aligned with you, Robert. I'm honored to know you as long as I have. I believe that us meeting so many years ago was no coincidence. You're a really good person, and you're making a difference, and you genuinely care about other people.
Well, thank
Oh,
you.
nice.
See, she just put me in a magazine.
I know. Did you
That's
tell
right.
the gentleman that approached you with the article?
Which gentleman?
The waiter with the article with your picture.
Oh,
That was her
okay.
article, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm at a restaurant, and the guy comes over with the magazine. He goes, "Is this this
That's
is you?"
cool.
He goes, "Hair's a little different." I go, "Yeah, That was when I didn't have much hair.
That's
now I got a
right.
little hair.
Yeah.
But before I forget, I meant to bring, his name is Jack Reese.
Uh-huh.
So Jack Reese is a very popular boxing referee.
Okay.
So a lot of the bigger fights, Jack Reese is usually the guy, and he's from California.
Oh,
So he's part of this whole Fighters for Health.
that's neat.
So I'd love to share with you more about it as we pick up some traction.
I think that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be involved on any level because I love that mission, and I think it would draw a lot of attention. That's really smart.
Okay, so
Yeah.
as we move forward and
Yeah.
before we're done, I want you to think about what key questions you have for Alicia.
Okay.
Because I have 3
Okay.
main questions that I want to ask you.
Okay.
But before I ask those questions, what would you like people to get out of your book? Like if there was one thing that you want them to take away from your book.
Strength, and the knowledge they can get through anything. And that it's okay to be vulnerable. That's a big one too.
So this is the kind of book that someone who's dealing with surviving cancer, right? They find out they have cancer. First thing you think about is, I want to win. I want to live. This book would be good for that person, right?
I believe it'd be good for anybody who wants to be inspired on some level, because everyone is facing some sort of battle. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the ring or not. There's a battle of life, and it's just a matter of how you face that battle head on.
See, I like that because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You know, so many people are so challenged today with their health. And a lot of that comes down to mindset. You know, we had a show when we were talking to Dr. Judy Ho. I share with them there's this institute called the Hippocrates Institute in Florida. And that's where you go, like people who get diagnosed with certain cancers or certain illnesses. You go there and they're known to have really good outcomes. But before you can become a patient, you must mentally be in the right place that you believe you're going to win. Because if you don't have the right mindset, they won't take you in as a patient. How do you feel about
That's
that?
awesome.
I think that's spot on. The visualization is, I address that in the book. I talk a lot about that, about keeping a positive mindset, not being around negativity or people saying negative things, especially before a fight. There's a part in there about my brother, who I love dearly, but prior to my fights, I wouldn't talk to him because he was worried about his little sister, so he would say certain things before and would scare
Right.
me. But it's because he didn't want me doing it.
Yes.
So, yeah, there is that in there as well.
See, that makes total sense. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's one of my 3 questions.
Okay.
I asked earlier about your favorite male fighter. So I want to know who's your favorite, or do you have a favorite female boxer?
Currently, it's got to be Layla McCarter. She's a world champion now. And the reason why I pick Layla McCarter is because, well, she's in my book.
Okay.
She's the girl that I fought in my first exhibition in 1998. She was a teenager at the time. And I'm not going to give away any spoilers on that exhibition or the outcome of which.
Oh, and so and this lady is a current
Yes.
pro boxer.
Yes. Big time.
Nice.
Big time. And she has incredible sportsmanship. And I ended up fighting her twice, and it's all in the book. And then later on in my boxing career, she worked my corner. And it's because of her that I executed sportsmanship as well, because after we fought the second time, she approached me, she embraced me, and said some really uplifting things and encouraging things.
I mean, you get what she's saying, right?
Well,
The woman that she once battled,
right.
fast forward, is now in her corner.
That's crazy.
It's amazing. It's amazing. She's an incredible woman and a really great role model for women. Very well spoken. You know, again, I'm going to say sportsmanship. I think it's important, you know, in any sport for people to have sportsmanship, but especially for ladies, just because I believe that there still aren't that many of us, and it's important for us to support each other. And that's what she does.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Very cool.
That level of respect is amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question. Drum roll, everybody.
You're gonna take so long. I'm gonna forget my
I
questions.
know. What is? All right. So I'll give this one, and then you give one.
I'm just
and then we'll
teasing.
end
I
with
think
mine.
I remember.
Your favorite boxing movie?
Oh,
Rocky.
Yeah.
Part 1 or 2?
Yeah.
One.
Okay.
That's
And what did you like about that
It
movie?
just rips my heart out. I always cry when I see it. It's so amazing, and Sylvester Stallone is amazing in it, and it just seems it's so real. I love the story.
It's cool that you say that because I share a part of that movie all the time with people when it comes to losing weight, right? Because you have to have a starting point.
Right.
And so I always go to that clip in the movie when Rocky had accepted he was going to he's going to get the fight.
Okay.
And the training must begin, right?
Yeah.
So he's got Mick, who's his trainer.
Oh, yes,
And
yes.
it shows him in his little studio apartment. He wakes up. He's got those the holes all in the sweatsuit. And he sits on the side of the bed and he's like barely, and we all know what that feels like. You don't want to get up.
Right.
Then he walks over to the refrigerator. He opens it up, gets the eggs out.
Eggs.
Boom, boom. I think it was 5 of them. Drinks them. And then, he does that whole thing. And then he goes outside, a little stretch here, a little stretch there, and he starts jogging. And remember what happens? He finally gets to the stairs.
Right.
But he can't run up the stairs. He's grabbing the side, and he kind of walks up. And I share that with people because I said, you have to have your own Rocky moment.
Yeah.
Kickoff, launch, start, and it sucks. And it's not going to be fun. And it's going to hurt. And you're going to be tired. And you're not going to want to do it. But fast forward, right before he fought Apollo, remember he was running through the streets and the crowds are following him. And he runs up, Rocky,
So awesome.
Rocky, doom, 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 and then they're in the ring.
Yes.
So have I seen that more than once?
Maybe. Well,
Yeah,
maybe.
as you were describing it, because when I cry when I see that because it's so amazing, because he was the underdog, and he just kept pushing through, and just all these things that were against him, and he just did it. And that's why I love that film.
So many lessons in that movie.
It's a beautiful film.
Yes, and and if you really think about it, did he lose? Because he didn't win. Apollo won.
That first one, right? He didn't win.
And then after he didn't win, he's in the, what did he start saying out loud? So when Sylvester Stallone, Rocky, he's in the ring. Come on, Barbara, step up.
Does he start yelling, Adrian? Is it
Yes.
Adrian?
When he starts calling her name.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
see?
a love story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Aw.
And then there's that.
Right.
That
We
was
can
so
touch on that.
good.
Everything about it is so
Adrian.
wonderful. That's all he wanted.
And he won. So
He
he
did.
didn't win,
So
but
he
he
did
won.
win. That's
he won
right.
over the people.
He got the girl.
Yeah, and he
That's
got the girl. Now I'm going to cry.
I know.
Yeah, great movie.
It was
Yeah.
great.
And it's
yeah.
funny, when my daughters, so right now they're 12 and 9,
Mm-hmm.
and I have sat down with them and watched Rocky all the way through. They didn't move.
Really?
They were totally engaged.
Wow.
I mean, little girls watching, they're like, when's the next one? So, then we watched part 2, and now they're ready for part 3.
How cute.
Yeah.
I got to watch it again.
They're all great. So what did your kids think of the movie?
Oh, they loved it.
Yeah.
They
Something
loved
about
it.
Yeah.
And what's cool is movies back then, I'm sure there's movies today, but
Right.
you watch a movie like that and you're talking to your kids, certain life situations come up and you can go back to that movie and say, hey, remember in Rocky when he just started and it was hard for him?
Oh, like a
And-
lesson.
And in their mind, that tape is playing, right? They go
really
back
good.
to that movie and they go, yeah. And I remember he was running like after he
Right.
started doing it like repeatedly and he didn't give up. I go,
Yeah.
yes, you got it. You know,
Aw,
great movie.
Cute.
Yeah, that's
All right.
good stuff.
So good.
Right.
You can ask your question now.
Shoot, I don't know now. Like, what am I going to ask? No. So I'm going to go back to how you start off as a journalist, right?
Yeah.
Completely different from boxing.
Sure.
And do you feel that? So you were kind of labeled, I guess. This is what you did. This is what the thing that you did, right? Your journalistic profession. Now, as a boxer, did you feel like at first they were two totally separate entities, like you were like either one or the other? Because I think the reason why I ask this is that I feel like a lot of times I'm speaking like also as a woman that we have labels of what we're supposed to be, and then to do anything different isn't quite right. I mean, how did you feel about that? Because they are so different. Like,
Yes, absolutely. They're very different. And my identity was largely tied up into being a journalist, and that went on for many years. And then, of course, when I became a boxer, my identity was with boxing. And I think most people have labels they attach to themselves or ways they identify things that make them who they are, or things that they think make them who they are.
right.
And I remember when I left boxing, and that's all in the book, The Reasons Why, but feeling very, very alone, very lost. You know, I almost felt like I was back at square one with a lot of things that I thought I had transcended. And when I quit boxing, I realized, wow, this stuff is all there still. Boxing was a fantastic distraction from those things, but I really had to face those things head on. So, you know, that whole identity part, I did keep them separate, but they did infuse as well.
Yeah.
And because of the rarity of women back then, and the fact that I was a reporter, because people think, you know, they equate journalists with, you know, being sort of smart. So, and then they don't equate boxers with being smart. So there was, you know, that contrast.
Yes.
And so that also brought me a lot of attention. The fact that I was a reporter and a boxer made it interesting, you know, for the press when I was written about back then. So I had two identities in a way.
Yeah. No, that's actually great. I'm glad you bring up the whole intelligence part too, because I think especially as women, when we're working in industries that might be male dominated, we work so hard to establish our place there and our level of competence.
Yeah.
And then you said how oftentimes when if you're doing something new, you have to start from ground zero again.
Yes, I did.
How would you share with people how to make that okay and not be scared of being able to start again and not necessarily give up your intelligence that you've established, but if you're going to do something new, that it's okay to start from ground zero? Like, how would you share that, I don't know, like wisdom or lessons learned with someone who's like on this side trying to get there and scared to do that, scared to backtrack?
Well, I believe in facing your fears head on, and I learned that through boxing. And I also believe the only way out is through. And if somebody wants to do something, if you want to do it, go for it. Go for it. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And surround yourself with positive people and people that are going to support your vision and feed into it and cheer for you and be in your corner.
Right.
And you might try something and decide, oh, you know what, this wasn't for me after all. Well, at least you know now. So that's not even a failure. Some people are afraid to start or try something new because they think they're going to fail. Well, I don't believe there is such a thing. You know, I never won a championship belt in the pros. I quit after my first fight, but I have greater rewards than that. What I got is so much greater from that. And so maybe if somebody's prompted to try something new, maybe it's something else they're supposed to learn through that journey, and they might not meet the end that they think they're going to meet, but it was more about the journey. So I think that people can go for it at any age, to not let anybody tell them they cannot do it.
Yeah.
And just to have that vision.
Come on, fist.
Yeah.
So now I do feel that it's definitely like we're at a place right now where many people are very vocal about female woman empowerment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling that here.
Yeah.
Good.
Like you guys are over there, I'm over here.
Well, I be like this. No, you're in our group.
I'm in the group. But Fighting Chance. Is this book about the reality that everyone, no matter what it is, has a fighting chance?
Absolutely.
That's what it is, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
This book is like, it's about, we all have the fighting chance.
Yes.
And then it's the journey.
Yes.
It's really not even if you win the way people perceive winning, your arm being raised.
Right.
You like we said in the movie with Rocky,
Yeah.
it's a fighting chance.
Absolutely.
And no matter what, because you step into it and you face the fear, the outcome is you're going to be better off.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
So
That's
true.
right.
He wants an Uncle Bump too, right?
Well, I mean, that's my final question is that this book is about, and I'm asking you, the fighting chance that we all have. And then we can finish that statement or that question, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes, that fighting chance means entering the unknown. But that's a journey too. And there's a part of self-discovery that occurs no matter what the journey is, no matter what somebody wants to take on. There are lessons to be learned in that. And the outcome might not turn out how you envisioned it. And it might evolve and change as you go through it. But there's beautiful and amazing lessons, life lessons that can be learned in going through those experiences.
Got to go through that door,
so
man.
true.
Yeah.
It's true. Because, you never know unless you try.
Go through that door. Years ago, I know we got to wrap it up, but years ago I met this gentleman who was part of the CIA, and he used to go and be like a private, spy around Gaddafi.
Wow.
And he said that Gaddafi had this room where they would take people that were imprisoned, or they had them, or they were trying to get something out of them. And they would say, okay, it gets to this point in the conversation. They say, you can go through that door, or we will shoot you right here. So you can be shot, or you can go through the door. You choose the path you want to go with. Now, your mind automatically means, okay, well, I can die and know how I'm going to die, or I could go out that door, man.
And who knows?
And that'd be a horrible way to die, because they play these psychological games on people.
Right.
Well, most people, my friend was telling me, would just get shot on the spot. Just get killed. Because I know how I'm going to die. But they didn't know that door, when you open it, took you to freedom.
Oh, my God.
And every once in a while, someone would open the door and get freedom and go, and they'd be happy and just run.
Right.
And he let them go.
That's crazy.
Like you said, go through the door.
Yeah.
The only way out is through.
I love it.
Yes.
That is powerful.
Well, thank you, Alicia Doyle, for being here.
Oh, thank
Yes,
you, Robert.
thank you
Barbara.
so much.
Fighting chance, everybody. Make
I
sure you pick up
know.
a copy, and make sure we follow you. We'll make sure that all of your social media links and all that is made available.
Thank you.
We'll support you 100%. You're always supporting everybody
Yes.
else.
That's awfully nice. Thank you so much.
And I just
For
want to say
sure.
thank you for making time for us today
I know. Thank you so much.
on the Stay Healthy Experience.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This was really fun. That went by fast.
And,
It felt like 5 minutes.
and for those of you guys out there, remember, get healthy, be healthy, and as always, stay healthy. Boom.
Boom.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Ferguson, and thank you for watching our show. Now, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell so that you are notified whenever we upload new shows. Again, thank you for watching.